Hello, everybody. Welcome. I see some new faces today. My name is Claire. I lead the learner success team at Coursera, which community is a big part, and community manager is my background, well, at least in recent history. And I guess we thought this was probably going to be a very interesting topic because this is, we see questions on this all the time. How do I pick a platform? So we figured this would be a good topic for the discussion today. I have chosen a platform once, so I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I've done it. But I'm hoping to hear from people who know even more than I do.
Yeah, let's talk about also that this is a two-part series. So for this session, we're going to talk about just the platform that the communities use, and then next session in July, we're going to talk about other software tools that we use, right? Cool. Okay, so I'm Tina. I'm a freelance community builder strategist right now. I currently volunteer with a nonprofit that supports women's health startups, but I had formed my own grassroots community, started with one meetup, formed it into a nonprofit, but now I'm based in Houston and trying to do new things today. Thanks to CMX for allowing us to do this. We just started doing this last September, right, Claire? You wanted to share what we knew. So I wanted to thank the panelists that volunteered to join us today. Michael, Hall, and Andy, you guys want to go ahead and do a quick introduction?
Sure. I'm Michael Hall. I've been a community manager for about 10 years now. Before that, I was a software developer, and I've continued that on as a community manager. I build tools to demonstrate the technology that the company I'm working for builds, but I also build community tools for community managers. I built gettogether.community to be a free event hosting site instead of using Meetup, because a lot of the communities that I worked on didn't have budget for Meetup accounts. And more recently, I've built the Savannah CRM, which is a community relationship manager to help me keep track of who in my community is doing what, who I need to pay attention to, and how I can build it to be larger and healthier community. And that's also available to other people to use.
Andy?
There's the mute. Hi, I'm Andy. I look after community platforms at GoDaddy. I've been playing with community platforms for a long time. Started off as a hobby in the mid-2000s, and lucky to be doing it professionally now, like 20 years later.
Cool. Linda, welcome. Glad you could join us. We're just doing introduction. You want to do a quick intro?
Sure. I'm Linda. I am at the moment the community manager for Indie, which is a tool for freelancers, and I am a community manager for a community called the Argonauts, which is about personal and professional development, leadership skills, and sustainability. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to meet you all. Sorry I'm a little bit late, but yeah, I'm here. I made it. So very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to start it off with one question to the panelists, and then we can do Q&A. And Anna, Dana, and Ezra, if you guys have any questions, Mary, go ahead and chime in. So the question that I have for the panelists is, what are the top 3 features or benefits that a platform might have that would be ideal for the community? And what community platforms do you recommend based on those criteria?
So in any community I'm working on, I usually look for 3 kind of pillars of functionality, and these usually come in different platforms. So I look for a way that the community can engage each other live, so have some kind of live chat where they can talk quickly to each other, have a platform that will store knowledge, so build up a knowledge base. When you answer questions or give support, somewhere where that will get held, that it doesn't disappear like it will in a live chat.
Mhm.
And then the third thing is a place where they can work together collaboratively. Most of my communities have been open source developer communities. So like we use GitHub or GitLab primarily for that third one. But those are the three things I look at. Where can they talk together quickly? Where can they build up shared knowledge from the community? And where can they work together?
Cool. So what community platforms do you recommend or have you used that you like?
I don't think that the platform itself is usually that big of a deal. Like you can use Slack, you can use IRC, you can use Telegram. All of these are really good for that first live chat pillar. My motto is always go where your community is. When you have people who are already interested in your product or share the same problem, where are they already, and use that. I think that's more important than the specific platform itself.
Okay. Andy?
I don't know if you would call these features, but they're definitely criteria that I look at when evaluating platforms. First one's documentation. So is there documentation readily available that includes being able to see instances of the community platform in production? Like, can I go and look at an actual live version of this community platform versus some of the platforms you'll see out there, glossy sales site, but to actually take a look at what the platform is, you have to set up a sales call. And I'm averse to that in so many cases. Second thing is integrations. I usually hope to find this in the documentation. Can the platform integrate with things that we're already using in an organization, or are there complementary tools? In most cases, I find that one platform isn't going to do everything that you need. So can you integrate your community platform with email? Can you integrate it with CRM, those sorts of things? And then the third is the ecosystem. So if you're looking at implementation, ongoing support, extensions to the platform, like what's available in this ecosystem of the platform? You have some really big ecosystems with vendors like Khoros, and you have some smaller ecosystems with more closed one-stop shop platforms. In terms of the best platforms, it really depends on the organization and the community and what you're trying to do. My personal favorites, though, I really like Discourse for open source communities, a more tech savvy audience. There's a lot of power user features built into Discourse around markup and shortcodes that I really enjoy using. Vanilla, which was recently acquired by Higher Logic. A little bit of bias there because they're based in Canada. Mm-hmm. But I've always liked Vanilla because it has open source at its roots, but they've also built, clearly they've built a pretty strong business on top of that, which I like seeing, just so you know the platform's going to be around for a while and you have somebody that you can call for support. And then another one that's near and dear to my heart is Envision Community. It doesn't get a lot of attention, but that's where I started years ago when it was called Envision Powerboard back in the early 2000s. I love it. I love their moderator management suite. And I constantly use that as a benchmark for how other platforms handle moderation. So you'll probably see me talk about it a lot in like the CMX Slack. Yeah, those are my favorites.
Very good. Linda? You're on mute.
Yeah, there we go. So I will actually, I will tend to agree partly with Michael. It's about like the interaction that you have with the community and how you can bring people together to build, I would say, authentic relationships and people to feel belonging, because unfortunately technology has set us apart, but technology can also bring us together. From my perspective, I would say it's very important from a platform to have documentation where we can just upload documents and we can share with the community members, but also to interact with each other virtually. So what I've used in the past, I've used a lot of Meetup because I used to also organize community events for local communities, people to meet together, as well as I've used also Baby, which has been like very useful for my community because we tend to do a lot of things virtually and to try to build authentic relationship and one-on-one conversations as much as possible that can be. And another community and platform that I recently found was a platform for freelancers. I think somebody posted in the CMX Slack. It was like about a freelancing school, which I started like interacting there, and it looked very interesting in the sense of it has like a documentation, upload documents, to share things, and share also videos. I think something that is also crucial, like when you are building like something like a creative director is building something and needs the approval of the team or the community to share the videos. This is like, I've also tried Airtime for those video sharing and commenting, and people to be able to watch something real time all together and share the feedbacks and commenting and initiate conversations. But in general, I would say like platforms that are helping people to come together virtually and build like a relationship, either that is like from a video gathering meetup or anything that can people can share their documents or their thoughts and ideas.
Thank you. Claire, you mentioned that you chose one platform. You want to talk about the community stack that you use? I love that term, community stack.
Sure. I think community stack is maybe a bit of a stretch for our situation, but we have our community hosted on Insided, which I think is another platform that not many people really know about, but I really love them. I've really enjoyed using Insided, and I would say the things that I look for, I mean, I think it depends hugely on the community and what the goals of the community are and what kinds of interactions you want to facilitate, whether it is that sort of real time or whether you really want to build up a knowledge base or whatever else the community's for. Like, there are a lot of successful platforms for a reason, because lots of different communities need different things. But we switched from an in-house forum tool that we had built, which really didn't do a whole lot well. And so some of the real pain points we had from that I would now always look for. So one of them is just simply being able to find what you're looking for in the community. So unless it is purely real time, although even then you probably want to find the right channel for the conversation you're hoping to be in. But certainly if it's any kind of knowledge-based long-term archive, you have to be able to find the stuff that's already in there. Otherwise you're just, going over old ground, reinventing the wheel every time. And it's very frustrating for people. The other thing is notifications, stickiness, that kind of thing. If it's really difficult for people to know if somebody's replied to their post, then they're not going to come back. And that's kind of a critical piece for the community, especially nowadays. There are so many online communities out there, right? And you're competing for people's attention. It's not like back in the day when they were like, you could be a part of this one or this one, and it was fine, and you went and you checked every day, and that was great. But nowadays it's just not like that. So you have to be able to get a notification of some kind to wherever you are. Otherwise you're just not going to come back to that platform. Those are the two big ones that come to mind right now. And then the other thing, kind of to Andy's comment earlier, about sort of judging the company that creates the platform, totally agree with like the sort of sales website. You know, if you actually can't learn about the community, that's kind of a big problem. I would go a step further and say, like, ideally they would be using their own product and have a community for their customers, or, you know, for their potential customers. So Inside does this really well. They use their own community, so that you can, if you're a customer, you can go and talk to their other customers, which is great for, you know, sharing best practices and that kind of thing. And if you're a potential customer, you can look at the community and see exactly how it functions. And then they also have an ideation feature, which allows you as a customer to post product suggestions. And then they've committed to putting at least 20% of their roadmap to customer suggestions. So those kinds of things that you can look for, like company practices, I think are interesting, because if a platform's great, but it's not maintained, or they're going to ignore you if you have a problem with it, or that kind of thing, then it's probably not actually that great.
Amazing point. A community software platform that has a community for their users. Anybody has any comments or reactions or specific questions if you're looking for a platform right now?
So one other thing I wanted to, that when you go to select a platform, you should be thinking about what hurdles that introduces to people joining your community. Like, I've had a couple different communities that used some chat program and ended up switching to Slack, just because the feedback that we consistently got from the community was that they're already using Slack for something else. They already have the Slack app installed on their phone. Asking them to use yet another chat platform was a much bigger ask than we thought it was at first. And so just switching to a platform that they already had an account with and already used on a daily basis lowered that hurdle quite a bit, and got us a lot more engagement.
Yeah, I think that's a really important call out. Like, we can talk about platforms all day, but depending on the community that you're building, like, what's the relative value of participating versus the effort in participating? For some communities, it may be that you just need to show up where they're already spending their time. So to Michael's point, set up a Slack team because your community members are already in Slack. So you're another team alongside a bunch of other ones they're already in. Ditto for Discord. But if there's enough value where they see they see cause to go and log into another site and go use that platform, or download another app and use that, it's going to be higher effort on their part. So the value that you're providing through that needs to be high enough to justify that effort. Just something to keep in mind.
Okay, for me, the nonprofit supporting women's startups, at the beginning, we had a podcast that was the anchor to the business. And then since we started from nothing, so obviously we started with Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and all that stuff, but none of them really took. And when we decided to offer paid courses, at that time, around this time last year, the only exposure I had to a platform that offered free community and then an ability within the platform to move to like paid services was Mighty Networks. So I was like, Facebook's not working. Let's try Mighty Networks, because as a community manager, that was the only one that I knew of. If I had exposure to these other tools, like real time, I would have had a better knowledge. I'm like, my startup community is there. So we tried it, it worked. And I guess that's a message to those software platforms. If you wanted us to recommend it, we have to use it, right? Any specific problems for any of you guys that you wanted our panelists to chime in on? So, Michael, oh, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Just coming out of a meeting, but you know how those virtual meetings are, one to the next, right? One day we'll get our coffee. Anyway, sorry. I have a Slack community with a few thousand people in it, and we're a B2B company. And I know this is about kind of selecting a platform, but something that's been going through my brain is because this community hasn't been engaged with in quite some time, and honestly, when it comes to Slack and B2B, it feels like that's the platform to go with. But people, I'm getting the feeling that people are slacked out, right? They have 20 Slacks already. And so you're competing with other Slacks, and that whole Slack to Slack Connect thing is just confusing and no one uses it, right? And so I guess what I'm trying to express to the community here is, and get the panelists' insight is at what point, like, are you seeing that same issue of like you're competing against other Slack groups and you basically have to be in their top 10 or their top 5? And how do we navigate that for business purposes?
Yeah, so absolutely. I said it, people engage by switching to Slack, but we also got a lot of people who said, the absolute last thing they needed in their life was yet another Slack instance. So yeah, that's definitely a hurdle. One of the nice things about Slack is that you can mute notifications for instances that you're not engaging in on a regular basis, but you can still get a little red dot to say, okay, there's an unread message there that maybe you want to get to when you have a chance to get to it. But offering different ways to stay in touch, like offering a forums where there's asynchronous communication and they can just pop in, read when they want to read it, reply when they want to reply, and there's not an expectation of them being actively involved at any given point in the day. That helps. I have noticed that people tend to fall into two groups. Either they like that real-time synchronous engagement or they like the asynchronous engagement. So I think having both options available helps. You do have the problem of kind of bifurcating your community when you do that, though. And there are some tools to help you bridge it. But in my experience, they don't necessarily form a single cohesive community. You still end up with almost two sub-communities that are just kind of lightly connected together.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. Even going back, like early days, gaming and tech communities, you would have a forum crowd, you would have an IRC or chat crowd. You're all part of the same community. There's a lot of overlap, but folks prefer interacting in whatever way works for them. So I think if you have a fairly big community, think of the Slack team as one opportunity for them to interact on, the equivalent of IRC. Have, to Michael's point, the asynchronous place for them to go to reach each other, forum style or group style. And then look at what are you doing to hook them. Do you have a newsletter or a digest that you're sending out, maybe on like a bi-weekly or a monthly or a weekly basis, whatever's right for your community, to just raise the awareness of what's going on? And then to solve for Slack specifically, like what's happening in that Slack team that is going to be worth taking some time and going in there? Like, are you doing AMAs in there? Are there folks who are active in that Slack team that the only way to get a hold of them is through that Slack team? Maybe you have some subject matter experts. So just looking at things that make that Slack team more valuable than just being another place to spend time.
So just to bounce off of what Andy just said, one thing we did recently at Influx Data is we had to switch to virtual events for our twice annual conference, like a lot of people have. And for the first couple of those, we made our Slack channel, we made a specific Slack channel for the event and encouraged people to go there to chat. We encouraged people to ask questions there. And that was a really great way to get people from all other parts of the community to join our Slack and participate, even if just for a little while. There wasn't a whole lot of stickiness after the event, but somewhere around like 10% of the people who joined for that stuck around the Slack long term.
Thank you. Edmund?
Yes, thank you. Can you all hear me? Sorry for the banging. Someone's repairing my roof. So I'm Edmund. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Edmund. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a community consultant, and I come from luxury goods. So persuading people is like what I learned how to do. I just didn't want to do it for very rich people. So I stumbled into community. Here's my question, and I hear Michael, Andy, Anna. Where's Anna? Anna. Yeah, I heard them saying some stuff that really jived on this. What I'm hearing is that it comes down to behavioral patterns, understanding triggers and patterns to identify like where to go next, right? And so aside from the platform, has anyone come across a framework or a way of thinking around this platform decision that is based on behavioral indicators? Like when we say go where the fishes are, like it's so like easy to say it, but like when you talk to a client, everybody just wants to go on Discord. Everybody just wants to go on Slack. And you're like, your users aren't there. Like, this is not what they're doing with you yet, you know? So my question is this: is there anyone you know of that has a good framework for this decision making around community platforms that's based on behavioral indicators? Sorry, I asked really deep questions sometimes.
No, it's a really good question, and I do not.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like for me, it's been hearing from people in other sources. So hearing from people at conference talks, hearing from people at meetups. They say, hey, do you have a Slack I can join? Or do you have a Discord I can join? And just kind of keeping track of, you know, what's the one that most people are asking about.
Got it. Thank you.
I did a session, God, it was a month ago now, for Community Club. They were doing a community-led conference, and I did a session on choosing community platforms. I just dropped a link in the event chat here. Down under your stakeholder needs, I have a section calling up for members. This is something I've gone through a few times at GoDaddy, and with other orgs, where you literally just find members of that community, sit down with them, and just go through a Q&A session to really assess out like where are you spending your time, what are the things that motivate you, what are the things that interest you, and you're using that to craft your basically crafting your requirements document for choosing the platform. What you're really trying to do is understand their behavior. So if you're finding these trends repeatedly, and you can do quantitative surveys, you can do qualitative surveys, but if you find these trends on where people are spending their time, the things that motivate them, trying to weave that into your plan, it's not so much about the platform, but it's about the programming. Like, what are you going to be doing on the platform to drive this behavior? You could swap out a bunch of different platforms. The programming approach is probably going to be about the same for that community. And that's what you're trying to really figure out is, if we have to remove the platform tomorrow and replace it with something else, can we continue doing the things that our members expect? And it's building that routine. Another method that I look at is, what are the things you're going to do annually, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily? And just think through, like, are there routines, habits, things that we can do on a regular basis? and build programming around that, so people come to expect that on Monday or every 3 months, like there's going to be a thing happening. And if nothing else, I want to make sure that I'm there for that.
Andy, thank you. That is beautiful. I'm glad you said that, and thank you for the link. Really appreciate that.
So Edmund, for my end, because we already had a podcast, so we had podcast fans, but obviously it's a one-to-many, right? They were listening to us, but there was no way for us to hear from them. So we just started doing Zoom events, like a podcast discussion Zoom. And then we would ask people, how did you find out about us? To try and figure out which platform did they hear about us? Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. But none of them, was really, they were not all in one place. So we decided to offer a new platform. When our fans, fell in love with us and listened to us and joined our podcast listening parties once or twice, and they wanted to continue talking to each other, we just said, look, we have a brand new community that we are inviting you to join. So we used Mighty Networks. And even though they were on Facebook, I didn't hear anybody say, I don't want to do it. Because they were already getting the value from the Zoom chats. They already knew what kind of product we were. We were positioning our platform as a way for them to get more value from us, right? And we posted everything there.
Yeah, I think your platform has to be secondary. If you're relying on your platform to drive all of your engagement, you have a big problem. You have to be providing value through the community, and then sure, that a better platform can help maximize that, but it's can't be the only piece.
It goes to Dan earlier. You said, Slack. Why should people go to your Slack? And Andy mentioned that there has to be value in that platform, with whichever platform that you use. If they feel like they're special in that platform, or they're getting something out of it, they'll come back.
Who said it's not about your platform? I was typing it on another screen. I didn't see who said it.
Claire,
I love you. That's exactly what I needed to hear today. I appreciate it.
welcome to the new folks that came in. If you have any specific questions about any issues you have, or if you're looking for a platform right now, our panelists are here to give you different insights to help you guys out.
No, happy to be here, and thank you. I'm just kind of getting into this and just going to be listening for today. Thanks.
Cool.
Yep. Just drop by, catching up with the discussion. I will share my questions in a minute.
Okay. Mary, any questions so far?
I guess I'm curious, when you're kind of, you have a community that you've identified some of the needs, the type of programming you want to do, where do you start in terms of, it seems like, especially with so many platforms coming online or some of these mergers and acquisitions, where do you kind of start actually finding the platforms that suit those needs, and how do you kind of sort through that?
So I know the community club has like a landscape document that lists all of the different platforms, kind of separated by functionality or use case. That's a good way to see, what your options are in the area, and give you a place to get started doing research on what the different platforms offer.
I'm going to throw an Airtable link in the chat here. I mentioned the site that I'm working on, that community stack site. This is the Airtable that powers it. It's a work in progress. It's a side project, but I have like a few hundred different platforms listed and tagged by type. feature set and audience. So if you want to bookmark that, I'm hacking away on it when I can. But yeah, there are so many different platforms that the evaluation process is. I don't even know where you would start at this point. It's one of the reasons I started hacking on this. I think one of the best things you can do is join the meta communities for community builders, CMX Community Club being the two that I'm active in. Ask in there, see what other folks are using. Word of mouth is going to give you more context than any number of tool review sites or directories. Talk to people who are building community, see what they're using.
It feels a bit like we're in like a .com era gold rush of community platforms, and you know, they can't all survive. So I would say when you are choosing, think about how hard it would be for you to move off of that platform and take your data with you if you have to.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Talia. I work at a company, a startup rather, that supports a community of general counsels in tech. And I give that sort of background because the effort started 5 years ago pretty casually. And so I really came on less than a year ago now to actually just take it, introduce data collection for the first time. And so there's all this historical background at the company. We've built out various, things on the back end, but from scratch. So the struggle that I'm facing at the moment is less about sort of what tool to use, but rather like, how do I port over information that's like in all of these disparate places at the moment, pretty unstructured data, and then use a tool that's like super cost effective, just considering the stage we're at, and like something that's not going to take up, 50 to 75% of my budget for the year. So that's kind of the struggle that I'm facing. And I think some of the things, my co-founders are really big on like no code solutions. And so everything is like, we'll just use Zapier and like do it to Airtable and then bounce off of 3 Google Sheets and then do that, so there's a lot of that going on, which is cool. But at the same time, I'm also like, God, please let this be simpler. I don't know if you guys have any feedback or thoughts on any of that. But yeah, I'm sort of just at the start really of making this more like official.
So to clarify, are you looking for something that will bring all of this together for your insights, or something that'll bring it and make it all available in one place to your community?
The former. So we wouldn't actually share kind of any engagement data with others. It would mostly be like for us to track just basic health metrics on the community, right? Right now, I don't even know like what some of these numbers are. And so I'm having to go to like our events dashboard, pull all of our events data. I'm having to go to our listserv community activity and like pull that information and really just do it super manually at the moment, but it would all be private sort of behind a screen.
Yeah. So as Andy just mentioned in the chat, that's kind of where community CRMs come in. Savannah is one that I've built. There's also orbit.love, which is another one. But the goal of these is to bring all that information together, aggregate it together, link people's different accounts on different platforms so you can see where that overlap is and who they're connected to. So these, I think, are the solution to that. And most of them do have some kind of connector to Zapier already so that you can just feed your data into them that way.
Cool, thank you.
Are you intimidated yet, Talia?
Never.
Because in my head, I'm thinking, what data do I know? What data is critical to me? And does Orbit have it, or Comsor have it, or Common Room have it, or whatever?
That's definitely something that I've noticed with the community CRMs that are spinning up. They all have a model, a way of thinking about community. And if you're just starting out, it can be pretty overwhelming. Like if you're getting into thinking about CRM and then applying the community angle on top of it, it can be a lot. So something that can help at the beginning is just figuring out what data do we actually need to collect and just starting with the spreadsheet. Just have a Google sheet, figure out what are the rows and columns that we need. And then from that, you can start to wrap your head around what matters versus what doesn't, so you don't get overwhelmed with just the amount of data you could be collecting. Narrow it at first, and then once you have that figured out, start looking at, okay, well, part of the added insights that would be helpful here. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of basic CRMs can help in the short term. And then the community CRMs do a really great job of adding on that extra level of what's the relationship between members, what's the relationship between the organization and its members, that sort of stuff.
So I would say start one step further back and ask what questions you need to answer, and then find out what data would answer that question. So questions like, who are my leaders in my community that will help it grow, or like, why isn't this particular part of my community growing like the others are? Start with those and then figure out what data you need to answer those questions, and then figure out how to collect that data.
So like the business needs, the business goals, then how, which part of that relates to community and which data will help you answer that question?
Right. Because ultimately that's what you want to do. You want to be able to answer questions about your community.
There was an episode of the podcast with Brian and Erica Cole where they talked about data portability and moving platforms, and they didn't want to talk about it because it's too messy. Because then the question is, will the new platform pull out the data for you, and will it serve you in the same quality or quantity as before? And do you even want to port the data? Is that part of their service? I have no idea.
I think you never really want to lose the data. I think it's a reasonable question to ask if you need that data in the new platform, or if you just need it available somewhere to go back to.
Okay, cool. Anyone else? Any wild questions? I can't believe there's so much opportunity in community.
Hi, my name's Ezra.
Hey, Ezra.
Hi. Sorry, I had problems with my audio a few times, and what's going on here? And it booted me out, and I figured it out, but
we can hear you just fine. Yes.
Yeah. No, I was having problems hearing you guys. I figured out what my problem was anyway, so I'm good. But and I'm, in terms of what I do, I mean, I've developed, created different communities. I'm more about the people, the experience of people connecting in real life. But obviously, technology is a part of that, and more so, it's increasingly so now. I've been doing some research and kind of trying to learn a bit more about the different platforms and relationships. I'm also interested in culture, like organizational culture, and I see community and culture as literally like energy and power. And so if you can create the right energy, the right relationships together, put people together on, like there's so many things you can do in bringing people together and having them work on things and work well and so on. And so I'm just wondering, and maybe you guys have covered this, but within these technologies that you're talking about, these platforms, is there also the capability of looking at like what's this called again? When you're studying the different personality traits and so on, I usually know the word. I forgot right now what it is, but when it studies the culture, like the actual personality types and psychodemographics, maybe, I think is that the term, where it'll study actually, excuse me, the different characteristics of people and start to tell you maybe who can work better as a team, and you can apply that to a community as well, and maybe. So I wanted to know if that's incorporated in some of these platforms you're talking about as well.
If you're talking about psychographics, then I've seen in a few of the enterprise platforms that have their own proprietary modeling and analytics, that they have things sort of like that, where they try to...
Like Human Intelligence is one I know of.
Yeah, once you start getting into the analytics, I think.
Yeah, more in the analytics side. Exactly.
Yeah. The other thing you can look at is if you're looking at a web-based platform, at the end of the day, a website is a website. So you could have analytics running on top. You have Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, whatever analytics suite you want.
I don't mean Google. I don't mean analytics in terms of how the site's performing. I'm talking about analytics in terms of tracking how people perceive the community. How they, like if they feel like there's like, for example, Culture Amp has a bunch of different types of questions and surveys to kind of get a sense of pulse of how people actually perceive and community, or how they feel about leadership, how they feel about diversity. Then there's another approach, which is to understand, you do testing or surveying, and people fill out questions, and then they start to categorize them in terms of personality types, and then you can kind of they'll tell you who works together or set a benchmark for this particular team or community, right? This group, they're generally this kind of individuals, or they work well, like they're these types of personalities. You can also have like a personality profile of a leader, and the kind of people they work well with. There's a lot of stuff around analytics of like characteristics and culture within certain communities. They would call it teams or organizations, but at the end of the day, it's right.
Yeah, so Edmund just posted in the chat, and I agree. I'm really skeptical that you can get good data about this from just the way people are engaging online. I think that's not nearly enough for you to kind of try and make these kinds of categories and put people into them.
Okay. Ezra, was there a specific reason why you wanted this measurement?
Well, so I'm with a men's group, a personal growth and leadership group, and been around for some time. We used to meet a lot, and obviously now everything's more virtual. And it's just to understand, like, if we are grouping, we're doing the video meetings, and we're kind of using that for our events and learning and exchanges. But if we were then to take a step further and use a tool or another one, and start to kind of survey and find out, ask questions about people, like, to determine their characteristics or character, are you an orange or are you a blue, an A type, but you know what I mean? Like, and some of these profiles work better together. So it was kind of I was just wondering if these platforms can do that as well, like ask certain questions and information to develop an actual accurate profile where people are filling out that information, they're answering the questions, and then it can tell you things based on analyzing the profiles and the answers and so on about the different people and who might work well together and so on, or where there might be relationship challenges, based on behavioral science.
Okay. Claire, to me, this is more like a big community picture as opposed to a platform kind of thing. Like, where is your community going? Who's composed of it? If where you want to go, are these the right people? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I think there's maybe two different things you're getting at. So one is trying to understand the personas of the community members that you have or are going to be targeting to join. But then I think I heard a lot about people working well together. So I don't know if there's a goal for the community of collaboration, and then maybe there's a need to group people into smaller groups based on who's actually going to work successfully.
Yeah, definitely the collaboration factor. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm not aware of any community platforms that would get that for you. I think you can, some of them will integrate with survey tools, and it's generally pretty easy, even if there is no integration, to just stick a survey link into the community and have people fill it out. But this is actually something that we, in some ways similar to what we're trying to do at Coursera. So one of the things that we've been struggling with our community is not having it integrated closely enough with our own database. And so what we really want is to understand who's interacting with our community and then look at the factors on our own database, like what courses are they taking, what subjects are they interested in, and that kind of thing. And so we're really driving towards being able to connect a community member with the learner so that we can combine all of that data together. It's not exactly psychographics, but it's getting that sort of additional information. And so I don't know, it seems sort of similar if you have a survey tool that's connected up to understand all of that additional information, and then maybe you can connect the two. But yeah, I don't think you could facilitate it simply through a community platform. I think you would have to connect 2 or even 3 different systems together.
I guess that's what I'm hearing now, is that it would have to integrate a few different things. I just thought maybe there was one, you know, there's so many that they're doing so many different things that I thought maybe, you know, there's one that has this capability as well, the survey and understanding breakdown community in terms of characteristics and you know, call it organizational culture, the different maybe parts of the group. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I do not know all of the community platforms out there by any means, and it's entirely possible that someone has decided to build one that's really focused around small group collaboration. I think things like student platforms would be the first place to look, designed for, like, you know, degree students, for example, that have to do group projects together. Like, I feel like if anybody has tried to solve this problem, it would be that kind of thing. I think Edmund has something to add as well.
Hey, thank you so much for letting me speak. So, Ezra, relating to what you're asking, you know, one of the first things I would say is, I think it's a very positive thing you're trying to do, but I would actually like take it back to like basics. And I'll start from what I think the goal of community is. The goal of community for me and, you know, my clients is to create interactions, experiences amongst members for the benefit of the members, then the community. And one of the ways that I always like focus on doing this, and I think this will kind of get into the core of the answer of what you're looking for. You can do what you're looking for without necessarily getting personality tests and psychographic data, because personality tests, especially, they're impugned with, I guess, just known and unknown desires of the people that make them. So you might be opening up a can of worms you're not ready to deal with. But the easier way I do this is, I'm looking at the actions people are taking on the communities that I'm a part of or that I'm nurturing. And I'm also looking at the questions that people are asking. I personally believe people come to communities to have questions answered. Mm-hmm. And if you can create your own system between the actions people are taking that lead them to like an aha moment, some sort of enlightenment or some sort of better state, and pair that with the questions that people are asking, the ultimate goal for me is just to make introductions. So if you can make an introduction for someone on your platform, like Claire was saying, the learner and, you know, the teacher, if you can make an introduction by understanding the actions that people are taking and the questions that preclude the actions, and make an introduction for someone, you're already winning where you don't have to get into psychographics.
Thank you. Interesting.
Thank you.
I think a powerful tool that might do what Ezra's looking for is creating personas. And this is kind of a thing from the marketing side, but it's creating these like fictional people based on their needs, their experiences, and kind of thinking about what it is that your community is offering them. So you might have somebody who's, you know, a real problem solver. They like building things to fix solutions. You might have somebody else who's more of a teacher and likes walking people through learning new things. And you can define these personas for your community, and you can kind of broadly group people into them to get a better understanding of, you know, what are they looking for? What am I providing? What am I not providing? What can I do to unblock or promote this kind of person? But that's very much based around, you know, their activity and their needs, like Edmund said, and not like a psychoanalyst of who they are as a person.
Okay, I just want to do a time check. I think we're 2 minutes to the hour, and I want to be respectful of your time. Maybe we can take one more question. All right, then if so, I want to take a photo. If you guys want to be in the photo, you can turn your video on or not. And then I want to encourage everyone to connect with each other. I wanted to thank the panelists, Michael, Erlinda, Andy, what did I miss? And everyone who participated today. We have another session next month to talk about other software tools that are used in community. Make sure you join us, and thank you again. And I will take a photo right now. Smile. Okay. Claire, any last minute stuff from you, closing?
Oh, just echo what you already said. Thank you to everybody for joining us. This was another really, really great discussion. I always love it when it turns into a discussion that sort of keeps going versus a Q&A, and this I felt was definitely that, and lots of really interesting information. So thank you to everybody who shared information and got the discussion going by asking questions, and it was great to see a lot of new faces this week.
I wanted to keep going, but we have to go. All right, guys. Thanks so much. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, Tina.
Be good.
Thanks, everyone.